Hello and welcome to the Wellness Connection podcast with Fiona Kane. Today I'm actually going to be talking to you about apple cider vinegar. I'm going to talk to you about the benefits of apple cider vinegar, but also something that you need to be aware of. There's a warning in this as well that I will cover later. So both are really important. So I'll start with talking a little bit about apple cider vinegar and its benefits. So, what we do know about apple cider vinegar is one of the things that is really good for is actually helping to balance your blood sugar levels. And it's interesting because I'd read this quite a bit and talked about this quite a bit, and I've been trying to convince one of my clients to try this for quite a while. Someone who's having issues with their blood sugar regulation, and this is someone with diabetes. And this client actually did finally try it and said, "Oh my God, you know what, Fiona? Wow." So I'm actually seeing it right now. I'm seeing the changes in someone who's actually using apple cider vinegar for their blood glucose levels. So it's really interesting. Some of these things, they're considered sort of old wives' tales, or because they haven't done double-blind placebo trials and things like that. Sometimes people disregard things. However, it's always really important to look at, well, why do people think it was worthwhile, and what was the tale behind it? Because often they're right, and often it's true, and you don't need a double-blind placebo trial, and especially for something as like apple cider vinegar. I'll tell you about the warning later, so there is something you need to be aware of it. But apple cider vinegar, like when it's like a food as medicine thing, in more cases than not, as harmless. So the worst thing that can happen is nothing happens, and the best thing that can happen is you get the benefit from it. So it's not like, oh my God, try this terrible drug that's going to make you sick and blah, 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 which is what people are generally very happy to do, is actually try this food as medicine thing. If that doesn't work, then okay, you use the medicine. But yeah, the risks are quite low in regards to trying food as a medicinal, uh, you know, um, as far as the food not harming you. The timing of medications and whether you need them and all that sort of stuff, that's another story. Obviously, always just talk to your doctor if you're not sure. However, it's funny because people are just so, they don't trust food as medicine, but a lot of people for a long time had to use food as medicine because they didn't have anything else. So it's always useful to go back to it. And I take medications, and a lot of my clients take medications. I am not anti-medication. I actually think that modern medicine and medications all have their place. However, if you can do a food as medicine and it works, great. So to me it's like, well, take as minimum amount of medications as you need if you can find other ways of achieving the same thing. So anyway, getting back to apple cider vinegar, because I went a little bit off, but you get what I'm trying to say, I'm sure. Apple cider vinegar is really good for helping blood sugar levels. So it improves insulin sensitivity. So also for people with insulin resistance, which is what someone with diabetes, what type 2 diabetes has, and or pre-diabetes as well, because pre-diabetes is insulin resistance. They just don't always call it that. So what they found is that it may help improve insulin sensitivity and lower blood sugar levels after meals. So studies suggest that taking it with a high carb meal can reduce the glucose spike. So I've talked before about that glucose spike. It's like in high GI foods or foods that are high in glucose or high in carbohydrate, you get quite a spike after a meal. So having the apple cider vinegar can help with that spike, and that's what my client has noticed as well. So yeah, saying could be particularly useful for managing type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes insulin resistance, which is what I was just talking about. So it is worth testing and measuring. Look, I would always say for anyone with diabetes, if you're on medications, especially if it's insulin, be really careful when you're testing and measuring things. Maybe wear a blood glucose monitor and talk to your doctor, and make sure you're reviewing medications and things. Make sure you also know the signs and symptoms of having a hypoglycemic attack. So Google that, make sure you're all over it. But generally speaking, confusion and nausea are two of the big signs, and you might have acetone breath, like a nail polish remover breath, vomiting, that kind of thing. But please just if you are taking diabetes medications, it's really useful for you to know what hypoglycemia looks like. So look it up, hypo, Hypo glycemia, like even if you type it in wrong, Google will fix it for you. Don't worry about spelling. But it's good to know what that is, just in case. So if you're playing around with blood glucose levels naturally and you're also on medications, you could potentially push it too low. So it's always good to check that stuff. But besides that, in general, it's worth trialing this and trying to see how well it regulates your blood glucose levels. So the other thing that apple cider vinegar is really good for, it's really good for your digestive system. And I've seen this work in lots of different ways. So I've seen this work for people. Sometimes people will just take it at the beginning of the day. It seems to stimulate digestion throughout the day and is really supportive overall. And it'll help them reduce their reflux, right? And they just digest their foods better. Other people might take it sort of before a meal, so a little bit of time before a meal, again for the same purpose, to help you digest that meal well. But I've actually even seen one client years ago. Actually, it was more than one client I've seen who've done this now, where these are people who maybe get really bad reflux at nighttime, and they say they get into bed, they lay down, and they just get this sort of, acid sort of coming up. And so I've had clients who take apple cider vinegar at bedtime to reduce that acid, and it actually works, and they're able to sleep better. They're not kind of drowning in their own acid sort of thing. So that is something to potentially look into for yourself, because it can be really, really useful for that. And, I think it helps because it helps increase your stomach acid, which helps you break down your food better. So that reduces the likely of indigestion. I know that people always think that having acid and reflux and stuff is because you've got too much acid, but it's really more usually because you don't have enough acid and it's not doing its job. And because it's not doing its job and the food sits there for too long, it starts pumping up where it shouldn't be. But it's rarely about too much acid. So this will help you make that stomach acid, and because you're going to break down food more effectively, it's saying here is that it's going to really help with bloating and indigestion. And of course, that's if you're making all of your acids and if you're making your digestive enzymes and you're able to digest and absorb your food, you will get less digestive symptoms because your digestion is working the way it should be. So generally people will get less indigestion, and so a lot of these are sort of anecdotal evidence, but anecdotal is still, I took it and it worked, right? That's fine. If you take it and it works, it works. So you don't need a double-blind placebo trial. You can't sort of say absolutely it works for everyone and this is absolutely proven thing, but you can try it, and if it works for you, then fantastic, right? So because all medications come with potential side effects, so it's good to have a food as medicine option. And that's funny because I've seen articles people write about food as medicine, it's dangerous, blah, blah, blah. The idea of food as medicine, if people are saying no one should ever go to a doctor, no one should ever take modern medicines, no one should ever do anything in regards to modern medicine, I understand that if you're just saying, here, take broccoli instead of having your cancer treatment or whatever, I understand then why people are saying food as medicine's a problem. But I see it a little bit differently in that food is medicine because the food you eat can certainly can heal, and it can also cause your health problems, because a lot of problems like type 2 diabetes are largely lifestyle related and food related. So the food causes your problem. If you fix what you're doing in regards to the food, it can help fix the problem, right? So food absolutely can be a medicine, but does that mean it is the only medicine? No. And does that mean it's instead of other medicines? No. It is just one of the strategies, one of the tools you use in your toolkit of things that can be beneficial. So I think it's like, because sometimes people, like zero-sum game, or they see things as like one thing or the other thing. And the way I see it is you want to have good nutrition, you want to move your body, you want to make sure that you're remembering to breathe sometimes, which is one of my biggest issues. You want to make sure you're eating well. Now, if there's medications that are beneficial to you, you want to make sure you're taking those as well. But if you're able to do all of these things and you do meditation, you're sleeping well, and you've got your connections and all of the good things that I talk about all the time on this podcast, if you've got all of those lifestyle factors going really, really well, and your diet is going really well, and you don't need the medication, fabulous, right? So it's not about avoiding medication when you really do need it. And it's not me saying, oh, we'll cure your cancer by eating broccoli and don't follow the doctor's advice. Not at all, right? So I think people who they get very fixated on what it means food as medicine. Food is one of the medicines, and there's many medicines as well as sleep and exercise and gratitude and lots of different ways of supporting your mental and physical health. So food is one of them, and it's certainly worth a try with many things to try the food option because generally it's cheaper, simpler, easier to access, and less side effects, right? So when I say food as medicine, that's what I mean as food as medicine, not don't take medicine, only look at food. I don't mean that. I don't say that. So just because some people get their knickers in a knot when you use the term food as medicine, but when I say it, that's what I mean. It's also there's some evidence that apple cider vinegar can be used in regards to weight management, and I think it's like part of the because it's helping with the digestion and support the digestion. You're using your calories better, and maybe they say sometimes it can promote feelings of fullness, so that might be part of it as well. But I think that again, it's part of a whole. I'm not just don't just start swallowing apple cider vinegar to lose weight. I think you do all the things, and that might be part of the strategy. Studies have also shown, like in animals, it's shown help with heart health, and it's saying that it can lower things like cholesterol and triglycerides. But certainly, what we do know is if you manage your blood glucose levels, that sorts out triglycerides and cholesterol. So that probably just relates back to the fact that it helps with the blood glucose management. That's why it helps the heart, because if you manage your blood glucose, which is metabolic syndrome, you're going to be supporting your heart. It's also apparently used as diluted as a home remedy for things like acne and dandruff. So because it's got antimicrobial properties and pH balancing properties, apparently some people swear by using it for those purposes um, of supporting things like pH balance and skin issues. So now, what I need to warn you about, though, in regards to apple cider vinegar is what's good for your tummy and what's good for your blood sugar levels is not necessarily good for your teeth. So, I'm going to give you some warnings about this in regards to how to help with your teeth. This also actually would go for lemon because a lot of people drink lemon. There was the lemon detox that was a really popular thing. I don't know, about 15 years ago, everyone was doing the lemon detox and they were all losing their enamel on their teeth because lemon is so acidic. So just have an awareness around if you're having kind of lemon and lime juices, or if you're having apple cider vinegar, you do have to consider your teeth because, like I said, what's good for your gut might not necessarily be good for your teeth. And this is a conversation I was having with a friend a few weeks ago, and it's she's been having issues with her the enamel in her teeth. So this is one of the things that we addressed and we talked about. So I'm going to give you some suggestions. I'm going to be reading from a list because it's easier just for me to read than remember it all. But I'm going to read from a list. So excuse me for those of you who are watching the fact that I'm reading. Anyway, it's really important that we understand we need to protect our teeth because you don't grow back enamel. You've really got to protect your enamel. So the suggestions are here. So one is you dilute the apple cider vinegar. You dilute it with water. So say 1 to 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar, but you have that in a cup of water. So say like 200 mils of water or something. So that reduces the acidity and it minimizes the direct contact with your teeth because there's water as well as the apple cider vinegar. So that can make a difference with how much of the acid actually gets on your teeth. The other is to use a straw, because if you use a straw, then what you're doing is depending on how you use it, you might be direct. If you direct the liquid towards the back of your mouth, you might be bypassing your teeth for the most part, if not entirely. Another thing would be to suggest, like after you've had apple cider vinegar, to rinse your mouth out with plain water. So you're just wanting to get rid of that any residual acid on your teeth. The next thing is to wait before brushing your teeth. And the reason being, When you've had, and the recommendation is to wait at least 30 minutes. So acid will temporarily uh, soften the enamel on your teeth. And so if you brush too soon, you can actually damage your teeth. You can actually damage that enamel permanently. So what you want to do is you want to leave it for half an hour so that your the enamel it strengthens up again, and so there's not so much acid on your teeth. So waiting half an hour is a really, really good idea. Like the other thing that is recommended, it might be like limit your frequency. So see what works for you. So whether or not you're having it once in the morning or once in the evening, or if it works for you to have it at one or two of your larger meals in the day. But just see, you might work out the timing and work out that if I just take it once or twice, that works really, really well. I don't need to be taking it 4 times a day. And in saying that too, I don't know any brands I can recommend straight up. I'm not quite sure what's available, but I do know that apple cider vinegar is starting to be sold in capsule form. And if it's just apple cider vinegar in there, then that might be beneficial as well, because if it's in a capsule, it's clearly not going to be affecting your teeth unless you crunch on it or it opens up in your mouth. But other than that, you'd be safe. I don't know how well that works compared to regular apple cider vinegar. You obviously can't have as much in the capsule. I think there's some people doing concentrates and things, and I haven't made myself an expert on that yet, so I can't comment one way or the other, but you could test and measure what works for you, and that certainly wouldn't be damaging the teeth. So that's sort of the other thing to consider as well. So you really want to protect the enamel in your teeth when you're looking at these kind of, whether it's lemon or apple cider or whatever it is. You really want to make sure that you're protecting your teeth as well. So have an awareness around this if you're using these things for blood sugar regulation, or for if you're on some sort of diet, or if you're using it for your digestion. It can be great for all those things, but just have a real awareness around protecting your teeth. So, anyway, I will leave it there for today. I hope you found that useful. Please remember to like, subscribe. Please comment and share. And I'd love you to rate and review this podcast. The more people find out about it, the more I can do, and the more I can devote time to researching topics and discussing topics, and the time to getting more guests on as well. So please support my podcast in any way you can, and the more, and if people subscribe, because if I think 80% of people who are watching my podcast and listening to my podcast are not subscribers, but if you subscribe, it gets rated a lot more, and a lot more people see it, and then that works better for me, and I would really appreciate that. And it works better for other people as well, because the information that I'm trying to get across will get through to more people. So it's a win-win for many of us. Anyway, thank you so much for your support, and I hope you have a great week. I'll see you all again next week. Thanks. Bye.